Well, the first thing you need to figure out, again, is going back to the process. Like, do you have a process, right? And then you need to figure out where are things breaking in that process. Without that, it's very difficult to use automation to solve anything, right? Because if you can't pinpoint what the problem is, you can't fix it, right?
Welcome to the Agents of Change, the podcast experience you've been waiting for your entire marketing career. Search, social, mobile, AI, blockchain, and neuromarketing. These are the Agents of Change, and so are you. Digital marketing success awaits, and your transformation begins now.
Welcome to another episode of the Agents of Change podcast. The podcast is all about helping you reach and engage more of your ideal customers online. My name is Rich Brooks. I'm your host. This is episode 619, powered by Flight New Media. Here at Flight, we help our clients generate more leads online. We help them drive more qualified traffic to their websites through SEO, GEO, and digital ads. And we help them convert more of that traffic into leads and sales through conversion rate optimization. But what happens next? Today, we're going to be looking past just getting the MQL, the marketing qualified lead, and focusing on closing the SQL, the sales qualified lead. We'll discuss where most businesses fail and how you can improve your close rate through automations and a CRM. On a personal front, I just returned from Charleston, South Carolina, where I did a couple of back-to-back presentations for an organization I've spoken to many times over the years. Day one was geared towards leadership and what leaders needed to do to successfully bring AI into their companies. The risks, the rewards, the opportunities. Day two was a half-day hands-on workshop where I took people starting with simple prompts all the way through developing their own AI assistants and creating AI-generated images. Now, this organization is made up of both multinational companies as well as family-owned businesses. And people's experience with AI was also all over the place. One company, I found out afterward, requires their employees to only use Copilot. Now that's not so strange, but they also aren't allowed to copy and paste anything into the AI, meaning they couldn't use any of the prompts I had included on a special workshop page, but they could type them out. Very strange. I didn't find out about this until afterwards because I asked them, could they have taken a picture of the prompt on the screen and then uploaded the photo and just asked Copilot to process it that way? Seemed like a good workaround. In any case, today's not about subverting corporate AI governance. It's about helping you close more sales. So let's get to it. My next guest founded Cultivize, a CRM consulting firm specializing in lead nurturing strategies and technology. With 15 years of experience running a creative agency, he identified revenue gaps in marketing and sales funnels for distributors, service providers, marketing agencies, and manufacturers. He launched Cultivize to provide customized CRM solutions and empower businesses to improve productivity, amplify lead conversions, and provide detailed insights on customer journeys from top of the funnel to the sale. When not strategizing in CRM, he enjoys family time with his wife, 2 kids, and 2 dogs in their lively New York home. And when it's warm, like it is today, cruising on the Hudson River. Today, we're going to look at how you can fix your leaky sales and marketing bucket with Jason Kramer. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Rich. Wow, what an impressive intro.
I was so excited to read it. Yes. And of course, we were talking about how we're having a particularly warm day here, even though the days on either side might be a little cool. So right. I am curious, how did you get started focusing on lead management and sales process optimization?
Yeah, so it really started, I've always been a very detail-oriented person, I guess you could say. And so what I noticed was when I had my agency, even if I wasn't doing marketing work for a client, I was talking to tons of businesses at the time, and so many of them didn't have any process, any system to do anything once they got a lead, right? So they spend all this time and money and energy to get a lead, and then it's just falls through the cracks, right? And they weren't ready to buy then, and they're like, call me back in 2 months. No one ever called back in 2 months. And I was like, well, this is crazy. You're spending all this time and money and effort to get the lead. How can you let things fall through the cracks? And that's where I was like, that's an interesting problem. I'd love to solve that. And as a byproduct, it turned out CRMs are a great tool to fix that problem.
It is interesting because on this program, we always talk about the marketing funnel, and it usually stops when somebody fills out the contact form. And we talk about the leaky bucket. And for us, it's always leading up until that particular moment.
Right.
What does the leaky bucket look like for somebody in your position?
Well, I mean, so this is what I always find interesting. They say that, well, and I say they, like industry statistics show that over 60% of people are eventually going to buy, right? If they may not be ready right now, but if they're nurtured, those 63% 3% will buy something from you eventually. And so what's interesting is that a lot of times, and I've seen this in all different industries, they think that person hasn't said no and hasn't gotten back to them, that they're automatically just saying, oh, they probably hired somebody else, or they decided they want to go forward. And they never go through that whole process to actually nurture them and to convert them. So like what I see is that it's a long sales cycle for a lot of businesses, especially in the B2B world. Someone's not just coming in today and dropping 30 grand to buy something, right? They're going to do the research, they're going to talk to other people. And so that's where I see the biggest piece of it is that they're just that's not that they're willing, they just don't know how to stay in front of that person effectively.
It almost feels like for marketers or for the marketing department, the leaky bucket really ends right at that point. We got the lead, hand it off to sales, whatever the case is. But if you're a business owner or you're responsible for sales, then there are so many opportunities. And it's funny because I've posted this question to LinkedIn before. It's like, how many times will you follow up before giving up on a client? Because I literally will continue to follow up and be like, hey, this is the tenacious Rich Brooks, filling up. I haven't gotten the cease and desist letter from the lawyers yet, so I assume it's okay to keep reaching out. But that is atypical. I try and make a joke about it. So this kind of begs the question, how we define the word lead and what should we define a lead to be? And what is your definition of a real lead?
So for those that are kind of in the know, right, in terms of like the lingo, you have an MQL, which is a marketing qualified lead. So that's marketing, getting somebody to the front door, right? And getting them to get inside that front door. And then you have a SQL, a sales qualified lead. Now, I would define a lead, right? Or a qualified lead is somebody that you've spoken to them. You've had a conversation. They're not just filling out a form, but there's been some interaction where you've been saying, okay, at a bare minimum, there's a few factors. They have a problem that we can solve, that we've solved before. They have a pain point beyond the problem. There's a pure need to fix this problem. It's not like they have a problem, they can ignore it, right? They have to fix it. They need the budget, right? So if they don't have the budget to fix the problem, then there's nothing you really can do to help them. And then the fourth piece is, the timing. And of course, there's other pieces in there. Are they the decision maker, et cetera? That's where I think there's a big misstep is people say, oh, like our Facebook campaign or our AdWords campaign got us 80 leads this week. Well, is it 80 people filling out a form or is it 80 conversations you've had? And that to me is a big difference.
So as you're working with these businesses to improve this process, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you're seeing out there when it comes to handling quote unquote leads or handling intake forms once they arrive?
Well, okay. So let's talk about the intake form. And now you probably know this, Rich, right? So they say that, again, I'll say they as a universal they, the average response time to a new lead, someone filling out a web form, let's say, since it's your example, 15 minutes should be your response time. 15 minutes, somebody should be getting back to that person. Now, that might be unachievable for some companies, but at least you could have an auto reply email going back instantaneously saying, we'll get back to you by the end of the day. We'll get back to you tomorrow. Some form of communication that lets them know, okay, like they got my info, right? Someone's going to get back to me and this is what I can expect as the next step. And so that's one piece, right, that I think people don't pay attention to. That they're like, oh, especially like in home services, right? You own a home, Rich, right? Call a contractor. Some people don't even get back to you for days or weeks or never get back to you. And it's like, how are they in business? Like they're not even returning phone calls. It's shocking. And so that's the first thing we need to look at is what is your response time and what is your response method? That's really important to have a documented process. So every time a lead comes in, you know what's happening. The second piece is responsibility. Who's responsible for talking to that person and to having a conversation or to sending them information, et cetera? And how is that person assigned? Is it just, randomly who's available that day, or is there a process and a system for that? And then you go a little bit deeper and you're like, okay, well, now who's going to qualify the person? And then you start going through the layers of what is your sales process? Every business is different. Some businesses need to do a demo. Some businesses, we mentioned home services, which we work in, need to go physically to the home, right? To do an estimate. They need to look at things, right? And give that estimate in person. So every business is a little bit different. But what I would recommend, right, as a good exercise is taking out a piece of paper, right? The yellow pad that you got sitting on your desk, whatever it might be, and just writing down what you believe your process is today. A lot of times people can't even put that down on paper. And if you can't put that down on paper, then that's a big problem because that means there is no process.
Yeah, I remember years ago, somebody who focused on sales said that the best way to create a sales process or a CRM is take out butcher block paper and just literally map the whole thing out. Because if you can't put it on butcher block, you can't put it onto the internet. So
that's right. Yeah. And if you have no process, there's no point in getting a CRM because it's just going to be a piece of software that's not going to do anything for you.
So what is your process for kind of identifying where these leaks are and then addressing those leaks? I think you had talked at some point about the 5 whys approach, and I'm not sure if that's exactly what this does.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing, we talked about the first elements, right? So like the lead comes in, that's part of that process. The biggest thing where we see things falling through the cracks beyond that is the follow-up. Now, it's not that a salesperson doesn't want to follow up. Every salesperson does. But let's face it, they get busy, right? They're like, or they procrastinate. I'll do it later. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. And then it never gets done. And so if there is no process, you as a salesperson don't have a way to keep yourself accountable, right? There's no system of checks and balances. And as bad is the leadership or the management or the owner of business has no idea what's going on. They think follow-up is happening, but there's no way for them to really check it. And so now they're just relying on John saying, yeah, I'm following up. And like, okay, John, good, you're following up. But we don't really know if John's following up. And so where I think and I know things die, Rich, is after that proposal is sent, right? They send the proposal, they send the quote, they send whatever they're going to send, and then they wait. And sometimes they might call a few days later, hey, did you get it? Yeah, I got it. And then they get kind of annoying, right? They're like, okay, have you made a decision? Like, are you ready to go? If you sign up by the end of the month, I'll give you this special thing. And it's all about trying to close the deal, but there might be other objections. There might be other things going on. And so what happens? The salesperson gets frustrated. They're like, okay, Rich, clearly Rich isn't going to hire me. I'm just going to move on to the next lead, right? Because Rich isn't getting back to me. I've sent him 3 emails and maybe I haven't even left them any voicemails. And that's another piece too. I would say that's really important, Rich, is salespeople. I'm not saying all salespeople, a lot of people do, but they don't pick up the phone or they don't use social media. They don't use text messaging. They don't use other forms of communication to try to continue that conversation. If you send somebody that you've had a good conversation with a proposal and you've sent them 3 or 5 emails over the course of maybe, let's say 4 to 8 weeks, then you got to break through another way. Like, obviously, they're not getting back to you for a reason. So picking up the phone, why not, right? Going on LinkedIn. And if you're not connected with them, like I always connect with people right away when I meet them. It was great talking with you. Even if nothing happens, love to get, be connected with you here. And the great thing about that is I post a lot on LinkedIn. So as I post my content, my name's constantly showing up in their feed, right? It's just a reminder of who I am. So those all things are critical. And let me tell you, especially in some industries, I've seen deals close 18 months later, 15 months later, and they're closing through the automation tools. They're closing because the salesperson completely forgot about it or just didn't have the time. Now the system takes over and says, knock, knock. Hey, Rich, remember me? We spoke 6 months ago. Like, did you get your roof done yet? If you haven't, I'd love to still talk to you about the roofing job. And they're like, oh, Rich, actually, I was thinking about that. Thank you for reaching out. They don't even realize the email was sent through automation.
So let's talk about automation, but I want to take a step back before we do about some of these other things, because this is an ongoing thing that I have with my team who are not responsible for sales, but just moving projects forward. It's like, oh, the client hasn't gotten back to us to prove the website design or whatever. I've posted every single week in Basecamp, our project management software, which sends an email. I'm like, have you picked up the phone? And they're like, they look at me like I've got 2 heads. And I'm like, I'm telling you, if you call somebody from Gen X on the phone, they are going to be so excited to talk to you. You'll absolutely get the answer you want. And then they're like, oh my God, it actually worked. So I agree. Like, I think there's an entire generation because of COVID that is just afraid to use their phone for the phone app on it. So I hear you. And I agree that I think one of the best things that we can do as salespeople or marketers, as soon as we do that outreach with the proposal, quote, whatever, is if we're a B2B business, is make that LinkedIn connection request for every reason you said. I think that's fantastic. And again, it just shows people where we're active. It shows people that we take our job seriously, and it shows people that we're better than the next person. So great advice all around. But these automation tools. So let's talk a little bit about that. CRMs are obviously your sweet spot. What are some of the things that are working or what are some of the things that we should be considering when we're trying to figure out, is a CRM going to be good for our leaky bucket or for our sales funnel?
Well, the first thing you need to figure out, again, is going back to the process. Like, do you have a process, right? And then you need to figure out, where are things breaking in that process? Without that, it's very difficult to use automation to solve anything, right? Because if you can't pinpoint what the problem is, you can't fix it, right? And so that's fundamental number one. Fundamental two is to figure out who on your team is doing work they shouldn't be doing. So here's a little kind of scenario that I kind of throw out sometimes when I have these conversations. So let's say a salesperson's making 150K a year. Just use that as a number. If they're spending 2 hours a day on admin work, unnecessary work that the CRM could maybe collect on its own, or that we can do through automation, essentially you're spending almost $40,000 a year on that salesperson to do admin work and not even sell, right? That's a large number. And so what we want to do with automation is say, okay, what's the busy work, right? What's the admin work that we can take off of the plate? Because really no salespeople want to do that anyway. And sometimes if they're doing it and they're doing it because they have to do it, they're not even putting in good notes. Or another trend I see a lot is you and I could have a good conversation today. And you could tell me, hey, Jason, we've been wanting to do this for about, 2 years, but the past CEO we had, didn't really want to do it, but we just got a new CEO in, 6 months ago, who's all gung-ho about going forward with this. We should have the budget firmed up in about 6 months. And I'm giving you like details of things. And you're like, but you're not taking any of this down. You're just having a conversation with me. And then in 3 weeks or a month from now, you go back and you put a note in the CRM when you remember to, and now all your memory of that conversation is all fuzzy. So nothing is specific to what I just gave you, basically the key to closing the deal with, right? And so that sometimes is a huge hurdle because now you're putting notes in that are not even relevant into the system. So I think my point there is that using automation, using AI, using other tools to help you do your job better is my ultimate goal. We're not trying to create more work. We're trying to create less work for a salesperson.
So is your suggestion that the salesperson should get better at dropping notes in the moment they get off the phone with this person, or that the automation/AI can actually capture this information in the same way that Fathom is recording our call right now, and then is smart enough to leave those notes and update the past? Like, is that where CRMs are these days?
Absolutely.
As somebody who's a very lightweight CRM.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the trend is going. I mean, it's already happening today. Some of it's still a little bit manual. So even, let's say Fathom is taking the notes, you might have to copy and paste those. You may have to put it into an AI prompt in Claude or ChatGPT to say, take the transcription of this call, and then this is what I want you to look for, right? So now maybe every salesperson doesn't know how to do that. Those are tools we built for our clients, right? That have that ability to do that. But that's definitely where we're going, towards that direction where this is going to happen automatically. You're not even going to really have to do anything. It's just going to do it for you.
Now, for me at this stage, I say this stage because AI is getting better all the time. I use my CRM to remind me that I need to follow up with Jason because he told me that in 6 months he was going to be ready to talk. So I get a little reminder, and then I manually will either call him, email him, whatever the case is. Are you suggesting that that's going to be a thing of the past? I guess my concern is
No.
I still don't think AI talks as well as I do, even though it's been trained on people who speak much better than I do.
Yeah. You're doing a great job. No,
Thanks,
I don't think it's going to replace that. I think what it's going to do is it's going to perhaps, which it isn't doing quite effectively right now, but it's going to listen to that conversation and make recommendations on maybe what the cadence should be for the follow-up so that you're not calling back in a month when they're like, call me back in 3 months, but you're eager and you're like, why are you calling me, Jason? Like, I told you to call me in And at the end of the summer, it's not even the end of April. So I think it's going to help with that, but I do not think it's going to replace you physically calling, having your personality and your way of talking. That I don't see happening anytime soon because people buy from people. They're not going to buy from AI bots. I don't see that happening. Yeah.
In fact, a lot of your automation recommendations sound a lot like the AI recommendations I'm hearing right now, that at the end of the day, humans want to connect with humans. And so use these tools in the background, but not necessarily in the foreground, because people might even be off-put by automated responses when they're looking for that human connection because it's humans who care.
There's so much out there. Like, for example, like you see a post and tons of people using AI for social posts. And I use it a little bit too. I'm not saying I don't. But like if they don't build the proper prompts, you know it's AI because you see all the
M dashes,
emojis, right? Or you see the M dashes or the different symbols that somebody doesn't write that way, or they do semicolons. No one puts semicolons into a sentence, right? Like usually like you're just writing something kind of conversationally. So you could pick up on when it's used if it's being used in a very generic way.
It kills me that you say all those things only because they're true. And I have always used M dashes and semicolons, perhaps because I'm an English major at heart. Emojis are a newer addition. But yeah, whenever I have AI write in my voice, I end up always taking out a lot of those telltale signs because even though I would probably put them in there if I'd done it by hand, now with automation, I don't trust it. Earlier, you talked about the idea of following up without being kind of a pain in the ass. Yeah. What are some tips that you have on how do we follow up with clients or prospects who haven't given us the green light or the red light without being annoying or damaging the potential relationship?
One word, education, pure education. So everything we do, even here at Cultivize and for the clients we consult with, we're trying to educate that buyer. So whether or not they buy from you, they're better informed having met you, and that's going to make you stand out. And I've seen that time and time again where we even get feedback. We just signed a new client in January. He's like, I talked to at least a half a dozen other competitors of yours. He's like, the only reason I kept coming back to you is you answered all my questions and you kept on giving me information and educating me about the CRM selection process. He's like, nobody else did that. Everybody else was just trying to sell me a piece of software. And so that's what's going to really, I think, be the differentiator between the people that do it correctly and the people that just are annoying, right? They're like, did you look at the contract yet? Do you have any questions? Did your boss look at it? And they're just asking transactional questions about trying to close the deal versus trying to provide more value.
Mm. All right. That's a great point. Just your words are perfect there. It's like, because I find myself sometimes doing this too. Like when I want to follow up because they haven't gotten back to me, like, did you have any questions about which seems to me the nicest way I could ask, but it's still obviously transactional. So I'm going to try and figure out a way to add some education into that when I'm working these clients. I will say many of us already feel pretty stretched thin. And what is the most important step we can take if we want to stop losing leads, but we don't necessarily have a dedicated sales team, if it's just us or if it's just one person's half position?
Well, I think you need to carve out time on your calendar to actually focus on doing sales. I mean, so we're a small team of 4 here, Rich. I'm the one that's bringing in the business. I'm the one that's doing sales. I'm the one that's leading the company. But every single day on my calendar, I have blocked anywhere from 2 to 3 hours of time that's focused purely on sales development. I don't take any other calls during those times. And it's blocked. Like no one can even book a meeting with me at those times. And so every day, I do it 4 days a week. Obviously a little bit on Friday, but mostly Monday through Thursday. I know by doing that, I'm going to have steady momentum in the pipeline. If I just say, oh, I'll do it at some point tomorrow in between meetings, it's never going to happen. So the first point is time blocking. Once you have the time blocking, of course, then you have to be responsible enough to do something. And every business is going to be different, of course, of what they do with that time. But that's really where I would start. If you're not already time blocking, it's a crucial psychological stage, if you will, or setup point to be like, okay, I know I'm going to be doing some sales productive activity at this time.
Beyond time blocking, if somebody who's listening now realizes that they have a leaky bucket in the sales process, what is the very first step that they should take this week to plug that leak?
Well, I mean, very first, you have to figure out what's causing the leak, right? Is it that you're just too busy, that you don't have any way of creating reminders for yourself to follow up? If you're putting things into a Google spreadsheet, maybe you have a column for the date you last spoke to them, so you could always be referencing that date and you're diligent about putting that date in. This doesn't have to work with advanced CRM systems. This could work with basic tools such as a spreadsheet. It's just about how you collect information. And so, for example, let's stay in spreadsheets for a minute. I've seen clients using spreadsheets before they were working with us, and there was never a column. There was like notes, but there was never any column for any date of any reference at all. No date of when you first met them, no date when the proposal was sent, no date for a next follow-up. And I'm like, well, how are you keeping yourself organized? How do you even know when you spoke to this person last? And they're like, oh, like that's, and they don't even realize, right? They just, like, they're not thinking that way. So having some reference of a date is critical, and having a next action item is also critical. But you also have to get in the routine of that. So you have to define for yourself, for example, you send a proposal, I'm going to follow up, just let's say, every 4 weeks, every 3 weeks with some type of follow-up. And I'm going to put it, maybe you put on your calendar, right? A repeating event at 9 a.m. on Thursdays, every 3 weeks, follow up on all open proposals. And that's your time to do that. Because if you don't have that process, it's not going to work. The other piece of this too is people always ask me, Rich, well, how long do I follow up for and how often? My recommendation, and some people don't know the answer to this, so it gets a little tricky, but trying to figure out how long your sales cycle is. So if you had to ask yourself, how long does it take from the minute someone fills out your form on your website to that they sign that contract to start working with you? Does it take 3 months? Does it take 9 months? Does it take a year and a half? Right? Trying to figure out how long that is. And then what you really want to do is you want to make sure you have touch points through that whole journey. I would say no longer than like 6 to 8 weeks in between each touch point would be my recommendation.
I love that idea of touch points because, like I said, I'm pretty tenacious. I almost take it like a point of pride that I'm not going to let it drop until they say, we've gone in a different direction. We took it in-house. We don't have the funding, whatever it is. I thank people. Thank people for no. Thank you. Now I can go on with the rest of my life. But the idea of touch points for some of these clients, because as you're talking, I've got like 5 or 6 of them rotating in my head. I'm like, I should send them some educational information right now, rather than just saying like, hey, it was been 6 weeks since you responded to an email. So that's some fantastic advice right there.
I mean, especially in marketing, if you're pitching them, let's say SEO or PPC, whatever you're pitching them, here's something that just Google, like a lot of the content I send isn't even my content. I send out links to Forbes articles, to Harvard Business Review. I was like, hey, I was thinking of you, right? And I thought this article would be relevant as you're doing your CRM research, Absolutely. And even though the article is 3 years old, they don't even look at the date. They just are happy to see the article and happy for the information.
Absolutely. Jason, this has been great. If people are listening, they want to learn more about you, they want to learn more about your company, or they're saying like, maybe I need a CRM. Where can we find you online?
Well, the best place and the easiest place, Rich, is afterthelead.com. You connect with me. All my social is there, as well as some downloads for your audience. We talked about lead nurturing today. We have a great book, The Blueprint for How to Nurture Leads. I also have guides, whether or not you have a CRM. I have a research guide on how to appropriately go out and seek a new CRM or amplify the one you already have. And as probably the audience heard today, I love to just chat and have these types of conversations. So for your listeners, Rich, there's a link in there to book a no obligation call with me just to kind of be able to help anybody I can that's listening today.
Awesome. Jason, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thank you so much, Rich.
Lots of great ideas from Jason. And if you missed any or you just want to hear it again, you can get the audio, you can get a transcript, you can get the show notes, you can get a blog post about what I learned, all available for free at theagentsofchange.com/619. My big takeaway from today's conversation, the deals you think you've lost are often just waiting to hear back from you one more time. They're busy. Be the person who stays in the game, keep providing value, and earn their trust. With our 29th year in business within sight, I can tell you, it's that tenacity that makes you an agent of change.
Don't miss another thrilling episode of the Agents of Change podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform.